All right, today we're going to dig into a publication called the Weekly Commodity Pulse. It makes a big promise to connect all the dots in the super complex world of global commodities, trade, and even geopolitics. So let's see how it actually pulls that off.
So let me ask you this. What could possibly connect a fleet of Chinese fishing boats, a debate about Canadian trade, and the Strait of Hormuz? I know, it sounds totally random, right? Like a collection of headlines from different planets. But they're actually all pieces of the very same global puzzle. Let's start putting them together.
Okay, first up, let's talk about what we can call the commodity conundrum.
You know how it is. A conflict flares up thousands of miles away, and suddenly the price you pay for gas starts creeping up. Or a policy changes in one country, and it starts affecting jobs right where you live. The real challenge today isn't a lack of information. We're drowning in it. It's figuring out how to connect these seemingly random dots.
So yeah, how do you find a guide through all that noise? Well, that's supposedly where the Weekly Commodity Pulse steps in. I mean, their mission statement gets right to the point. No nonsense analysis. That's a pretty bold claim. They're promising to cut through all the chatter and give you a clear look at the forces that are actually shaping our economy, not just add to the confusion.
And this is the really important part. This is meant to be more than just a summary of what happened. The whole emphasis is on the why and the how. It's about understanding the deep-down mechanics behind the market shifts, not just hearing a report that they happened.
Okay, so talk is cheap, right? Let's see how this actually works in practice. We're going to try to decode a few global hotspots, and we'll start with China and the Far East.
Whoa, okay, a headline like this, "The Chinese Armada signals war," it's definitely designed to make you stop and look. It instantly links this massive fleet of ships to a potential war and economic panic in Beijing. So what's the real story here? Okay, here's the breakdown. See, these 2,000 fishing vessels are identified as a strategic militia, not just some guys catching fish. They're being used as a tool to project power and control these incredibly vital sea lanes. And why does that matter so much? Because China is hugely dependent on oil imports that have to travel through those exact routes. So by flexing its naval muscle, Beijing is also kind of accidentally shining a giant spotlight on its own biggest economic weakness. You can draw a straight line from their naval strategy to their economic pressure points. And that vulnerability, especially around energy, it's a theme that just keeps popping up. Which brings us right to our next section, the energy equation, where geopolitics and oil are, well, always tangled up. Check out this headline, "A New Oil Order." It connects a war in the Middle East, the critical choke point at the Strait of Hormuz, and this really complex-sounding strategy called the Nordic Plus Gambit. The whole point the publication is making is that these are not separate events. They're all part of a huge shift in global energy power.
So here's how they connect the pieces. A regional conflict puts about 20% of the entire world's oil supply, which flows right through Hormuz, at risk. That forces OPEC to decide if they should pump more oil to calm everybody down. And the Nordic Plus Gambit? Well, the source breaks it down as a theoretical strategy where non-OPEC countries like Norway could team up with others to create a counterweight to OPEC's influence. It's all about giving you the tools to understand these really complex power plays, not just sit back and watch them happen.
But it's not all just about these huge global conflicts, right? The analysis also zooms in on what's happening within specific countries. Like with this story, it calls Canada's $300 billion secret. $300 billion. I mean, that's a number that just makes you go, wait, what? What is this all about, and why on earth is it supposedly a secret? So where does that massive number come from? Well, it's from this headline. It's arguing that a political trade pitch isn't just, politics. It's actually part of a massive overlooked economic strategy called export arbitrage, which leads to the question, what is that?
And this is really the whole point. The goal here isn't just to report on a political promise. It's to actually teach you the economic idea that's driving the whole conversation. Export arbitrage, as the source explains it, is basically just taking advantage of the fact that the same product sells for different prices in different countries. Think about selling Canadian natural gas for a way higher price in Europe than you could ever get for it in North America. By explaining the concept, the publication gives you the tools to analyze the whole strategy for yourself.
So when you pull all of this together, what are you really getting? What's the big picture here, the ultimate value of this kind of analysis? It basically boils down to this really simple 3-step framework for understanding things. First, you get the critical data, like the number of Chinese ships or the dollar value of that Canadian trade.
Second, you get the geopolitical context around that data. And third, and this is the most important part, it shows you the connection between the two.
So, at the end of the day, the promise of a publication like this isn't to just throw more news at you. Nope. It's to hand you a new lens, a way of seeing the world that helps you understand the forces underneath it all, the why and the how that are actually causing the global shifts we read about in the headlines every single day. And that really leaves us with one big question, doesn't it? If all these massive global stories are so deeply connected right below the surface, what's the next huge shift that's already happening, hiding out there in plain sight, just waiting for someone to connect the dots?